If you're 1-1 or 0-2, this is a pivotal week for you early in the fantasy season, and getting back on the right track all starts with making the right lineup decisions. Now, I can't promise you wins with these decisions, but at the very least, you can put your best foot forward. Drop any additional players down below in the comments, and of course, we can discuss that down below. But without further ado, this is the Nolly Podcast. It's Owen. Let's start off at the quarterback position. Starting off here with Tua Tagovailoa, a guy who had an explosive week 1, kind of a subpar week 2. But Tua, overall, is the quarterback 2 on the season, and despite that bad week last week, he still leads the NFL in passing yards. And the Broncos defense is a tough unit, don't get me wrong. But that's also a unit that allowed Sam Howell last week to throw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. In fact, Denver, as a defensive unit, has allowed multiple passing touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. That should continue here with Tua, Tyreek, and Jalen Waddle. Don't overthink this. Start Tua this week, as he should be a smash play against the Denver Broncos. Sit options at the quarterback position. We have Justin Fields. Simply put, something is wrong in Chicago, and it all starts with the quarterback position in Justin Fields. This has looked like maybe the worst team in football so far throughout 2 weeks. And Justin Fields, simply put, has not been playing good. He's been missing a lot of throws, a lot of touchdown throws, and he just doesn't look like the borderline quarterback 1 that we saw late last season. This week, he's playing a very good Kansas City defense in Arrowhead, that they're most likely going to struggle again on the road. And it's not that Justin Fields is not talented. It's not that he doesn't have the talent to be a fantasy-relevant quarterback. He's just simply too big of a risk to play in this matchup. Make him earn it, is what I'm saying. Make him earn it in your fantasy lineup. Make him earn that starting role as your quarterback. At the running back position, Kyren Williams, we're going to start him this week. No surprise here, no shocker. Simply put, he's the new running back in town there in Los Angeles for the Rams. And it is, again, Kyren Williams. He was thrown into the fire last week against maybe the best defensive unit in football in the 49ers. And he came out with an A+ on his paper. He looked simply amazing. He played 96% of the snaps on the ground. I mean, he produced 50+ yards on the ground with a touchdown. But then through the air is what makes him such a great play in half PPR and full PPR leagues. He had 10 targets, 6 receptions, 50+ yards, and a touchdown through the air. All in all, he had about a 28-point fantasy football day. This week, he's playing a Cincinnati defense that has allowed the second most rushing yards this year, and they've really struggled as a unit defensively. So this week, no doubt, I think Kyren Williams is a must-start. Might be one of the best starts of the week, in all honesty. Zach Moss, I'm going to sit him this week, as this is a tough one, right? Last week, he had like 28 points, and he looks like the overall running back 1 there in Indianapolis, a run-first offense. However, I just can't trust him enough after just 1 week to start him on a weekly basis. Again, great week last week, one of the highest overall scores of the week, not only at his position, but just for fantasy football. This week, though, he's playing a very tough and stingy Ravens defense, one of the best against the run there. And Zach Moss doesn't bring a lot of passing work for, let's say that Gardner Minshew in this offense gets down early against the Ravens. They're going to have to throw, and in that case, the Colts are going to have Deion Jackson or Evan Hall getting the receiving work more so than Zach Moss. So if you're in a bind, let's say you're in a standard league, I do like Zach Moss in that case to take a risk on. However, if you're in a half PPR, full PPR, or specialized league, I would go with Zach Moss to sit on my bench this week to, again, prove to me why I'm stupid for sitting him after a great week last week. We have the Browns backfield here. Of course, prayers up to Nick Chubb. As a Browns fan, it was painful to see that game. But for this week specifically, I am going to start Jerome Ford, and I'm going to sit Kareem Hunt if there was any shocker there. As I do believe Kareem Hunt will, he's going to come into this offense and just this team, and he's going to play the Kareem Hunt role. The role that he's been playing with Nick Chubb for years and years, as he's going to be the third down back, a good pass protector, and, here and there, just due to his talent, he's going to score a couple touchdowns. But Stefanski has already came out and said that Jerome Ford will be the guy and the running back for this offense moving forward. I mean, after all, this offseason they had a choice. Do we want to trust the young guy in Jerome Ford, or do we want to pay Kareem Hunt? They went with Jerome Ford. So after all, they trusted Ford more than Hunt this offseason, and it looks like it's going to pay off. Ford should be playing close to 80% of the snaps in this offense. That, at the end of the day, is a run-heavy offense, and Kareem Hunt should sprinkle in there, at least this week, as he still needs to get back in game shape, as there's nothing like it, right? But before we get into the receiver positions, if you're wondering why I have these players, over on Instagram, I ask you guys each and every week, and I'll drop a poll in my story, give me some players that you're wondering who you should start or sit this week, and these are the 12 or so players that I managed to get from this poll. So, here we are at the wide receiver position. Garrett Wilson. Look, I'm a big fan of his upside, especially when he was coming into the year. I had him as a top 5, top 6 wide receiver in my pre-draft rankings. But things happen. Aaron Rodgers went down, and Zach Wilson is the guy at the quarterback position. Now, I do believe that when it comes to situations like this, where quarterbacks go down, or there's a backup quarterback, or just simply a subpar quarterback with star options, the overall talent does most times win out. And, for example, I'll give you examples. Guys like Terry McLaurin, all those years at Washington, and he produced with no fantasy quarterback, or no relevant quarterback. DJ Moore in Carolina, he got the latter half of Cam Newton, but really, he didn't have a quarterback for many years, and he still produced at a fantasy level. Or even if you want to go back in time, a guy like Larry Fitzgerald, with no really good quarterback in the later half of his career, and he still produced. These are guys that are so talented that despite a bad situation at the quarterback position, they still produced, and they are still fantasy relevant. However, we've seen this Jets offense and how they produce with Zach Wilson compared to when they don't have Zach Wilson at the quarterback position. Last year, a lot of Garrett Wilson's success came with Joe Flacco or Mike White, not Zach Wilson. And this is a team that is playing against Bill Belichick here in Foxborough on the road. And I think this is a game that I think New England wins. So with that being said, I can see maybe a 5 to 7 point day from Garrett Wilson in the half PPR formats. However, I just can't see an explosion from Garrett Wilson. Maybe he surprises me. Maybe he makes me look dumb, right? Because this is a first or second round pick at the end of the day. So it's like, why am I sitting a guy like that? But again, things happen, and his situation is completely different than when it was before the draft started. Nico Collins, a guy that is kind of came onto the scene here for most of the fantasy world. But this is a guy that has killed it throughout the season. I think he's a top 10 fantasy wide receiver so far. And there's just so much passing volume in this Houston Texans offense that no matter who they're playing, this is a team that's going to throw 40 to 45 times a game. And with that being said, a lot of those targets are going to Nico Collins. Throughout the first 2 weeks, I think he has close to 20 catches throughout the first 2 games. Regardless, he's going to be fantasy relevant each and every week simply because this team is going to be down and they're going to be passing the ball. So a lot of those targets go to Nico, and for that reason, he's going to be fantasy relevant. No doubt, start Nico Collins this week unless you're in like an 8-teamer. The receiving options for Atlanta. Drake London, this is a team that, well, I'll say this first off. This is an Atlanta team that's playing Detroit, who has, on one hand, allowed a lot of points. However, you can't trust either of these two guys. That is Kyle Pitts and that is Drake London on a week-to-week basis. As I made that mistake last week, I said to sit Drake London. Drake London came out and he had a 15-point day. He had a really good day. However, both of these guys they're in a run-heavy offense. I'll say this. They're in a run-heavy offense, and even after the Drake London game that he had last week, Arthur Smith came out and said his production's not going to be consistent. So that tells me you can only trust the running backs in this offense. We know Kyle Pitts. I love him. Go Gators. But he simply needs a new situation to be fantasy relevant. At this point, it's kind of hard to roster Kyle Pitts. Just to be safe, sit both of these guys this week. Save yourself the headache of trying to find the painted area. But these guys are definitely sit options for me this week. Jordan Addison, though, my favorite rookie coming into the year. And look, I know he's been carried by the fact that he's found the end zone 2 weeks in a row. But even if he doesn't in week 3, I still expect him to have a big day there against the Los Angeles Chargers secondary. As, one, they've struggled, even though they have the talent. It doesn't make sense why the Chargers suck on defense, but they've struggled so far this year. Jefferson, this week, he's going to be great. We know that, and he's going to get his stats. But I believe Addison will really have a really good week. I'll say that. as I think this team is trusting him more and more, especially down the field with those deeper shots. I think even if he doesn't find the end zone, he's still going to get you 5 to 6 catches for 70 or so yards, get you 10 to 12 points, and in a flex play, that is a must start. So Jordan Addison, to me, must start this week, even if he doesn't find the painted area. And at the tight end position here to finish off, of course, we talked about Kyle Pitts, but a start this week is Sam Laporta, as in week 1, he finished as a tight end 8 on the week, and in week 2, he finished as a tight end 8. Again, so overall, he is a tight end 4, a top 4 tight end on the season so far, and this is the guy you got in the last round of your drafts. Sam Laporta has proven to me that he's a pivotal part of this Lions offense, and given the health concerns of Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra moving forward, again, they're going to play this week, just they're not 100%. To me, this is a smash play in the 12-team, 14-team leagues, even in a 10-team league, as you might find yourself starting them over guys like Dallas Goedert or Chigo Okonkwo or even an Evan Ingram. This is a guy in Sam Laporta that has shocked a lot of us, and he's going to continue to do that. I think he's a must-play this week here against the Atlanta Falcons, which should be a shootout here, I guess. But that is going to do it for today's video, as again, we ran through about 10 to 12 players. If you want to throw your players in here, again, over on Instagram at The Anomaly Podcast, go ahead and follow us there, as every single week I drop a poll on the story. I say, give me some players you want me to talk about. You guys send those players over, and I will transfer them to the video. There's never going to be too many players to talk about here on a weekly basis. But until then, if you enjoyed it at any point, please support us down below on the road to 1,000 subs. But until next week, good luck this weekend to your real-life team and your fantasy teams, as we need to get back on that right foot. But then also, on Tuesday, we'll be back with another great podcast, as next week will be a historical week for the podcast. And you'll have to stay tuned for what I mean for that. But until then, stay happy, stay healthy. We're out.